is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 612. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you ready for the sunset show here for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms?
I would say 80% of shows I'm pretty happy when it comes to the sunset show because I'm ready to move on. That's kind of the whole purpose, right? You're out with the old, in with the new. You're ready to move on.
Yeah,
I would say 10% of the sets I'm oh, it's time for the sunset show. But I enjoy this set. I'll be a little sad to see it go. It hasn't outworn its welcome. And then 10% it's oh, I haven't drafted this set in a month.
Yeah.
I already moved on. This is one of those. I was done drafting AFR quite some time ago.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to get into all the details on the sunset show for this as we give AFR its proper send-off one way or the other. Before we get into it, our sponsor is channelfireball.com. And of course, this is where you want to go for really any gaming that you're into. If you're into card games, Flesh and Blood, TCG, Magic, Pokemon, you're going to find all of that at Channel Fireball. You can kind of sort by those type of games too at the top if you want, including things like the buy list, the singles, the sealed product. You can sign up for the newsletters. Of course, there's CFB Pro as well if you're interested in in-depth content, primarily really, aimed in many ways at people looking to do what you're probably here to do, which is improve, right? To keep getting better. One of the I think tenets to a good life, right, is that you continually improve the whole time, that you never kind of say, you know what, I'm a finished product. I'm a done deal. We're good to go. And, I think that if you take on different endeavors, that can help you out across the board as well. And if you want to go all the way with it, CFB Pro is one of the ways that you can do so. You're already doing a good amount here just by listening to a podcast. That puts you ahead of a lot of the players that you're going to sit down across either online or in real life. But again, if you want to go full in depth from some of the best pros in the game, CFP Pro is a great way to do it. And then, of course, you can get Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And then as we see stuff for the new set start to pop up in more official terms, you'll see pre-orders for that start to populate as well on Channel Fireball. So anything that you need Magic related, and even if you happen to play Flesh and Blood and Pokemon, it's all there at channelfireball.com. If you do end up picking up anything, I'd appreciate it if you use the affiliate code LR at checkout. It lets them know that we're the ones that sent you over there, and it helps out the show, and we do appreciate it. The show's also brought to you by you via the Patreon. It's patreon.com/limitedresources. All the information's right there on the front. Very flexible. You can sign up for whatever you want. You can change it. You can leave. You can come back. That happens sometimes. We totally understand. And we really appreciate each and every one of you who supports us over there. I'm going to skip the Patreon question of the week because I want to get into the Sunset Show and I want to do our last Crack-A-Pack for AFR. But before I do, Luis, a news item that I meant to bring up last week and we got a few tweets and I said, okay, I'll definitely talk about it, which was there was a sly little announcement in a much bigger picture announcement from Wizards, but they said that we're going to have draft opens next year.
Yeah, we kind of forgot to mention that, but the draft opens. That's probably the best news I've got from Wizards in quite some time. It is going to be probably one of the best ways that I'll enjoy engaging with Arena and Draft and get a little bit of that competitive fix,
Yeah. So, we don't have a lot of details on it. But when those come out and as we know more and more about it, we'll be talking about it. And of course, we're going to get you any information that we can find to help you succeed at that. I mean, that's an opportunity to play for high stakes. We did not get a sealed Arena open for AFR for some reason, and I missed it. I that's kind of the highlight of the Arena limited cycle, right? Is the set comes out, that's big, that's high on the list. Then, maybe there's the mythic grind that you go for each month and hitting that feels cool. And then to me, the kind of peak is when the, in this case, the draft opens come around. It's been sealed so far, but when the limited open comes around and all the limited players are battling, 2-day event, you can take some time to do it and you can win up to $2,000 playing those things in just a weekend. And, Yeah, a draft one, however they end up. I mean, we had a whole episode about how they could implement this, and I'm curious to see what they came out with. When they do release full details again, we'll revisit it on the show. Okay, let's do our last crack-a-pack here for AFR, the big Dungeons and Dragons crossover set as it ended up being. Our first card out is Thieves' Tools. That's a card that both you and I are not high on. I see this routinely, on the battlefield, but very rarely on my side of it.
Yeah, we'll be discussing that one later. I have it in one of the categories. It's a card that it puts you too far behind on board for what it gets you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they tried by spotting you a treasure to make it a little more palatable mana wise, but it turns out that really wasn't the weakness. Leather armor, just stone unplayable.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw one on the battlefield, even in the equipment deck. Deadly Dispute. Here's one that jumped way up the power rankings from where we thought it might be, and certainly would be the pick here, although there's just been nothing good. Goblin Javelineer is next, still taking Deadly Dispute. Bar the Gate. I actually liked Bar the Gate early in the format. Liked it strong, but I played it sometimes early in the format before people really sort of figured out A, how assertive the format was, and B, how bad blue was. And it just completely plummeted for me from there. I haven't touched one since. Certainly not on the docket here. Dire Wolf Prowler. That's a 3-mana 2/2 that you can pay 1 and a green to pump it up once per turn. It also gets haste. Yeah, this one also just ended up being too slow for the format. I would still take Deadly Dispute here. Here's one, though. One that you particularly liked early in the format. Hobgoblin Captain. That's your guy. That's your guy. I would take that here.
Yeah, I still like Hobgoblin Captain. I think it's a very strong card. It's a good 2-drop, and you're always happy to have that one in your deck.
Here's a card that we could put into controversial. This is Minimus Containment, so that's the 2 and a white that enchants a permanent, turns it into a treasure. The numbers, 17 lands numbers, do not like Minimus Containment. It ends up being mid-tier at best. What do you think about that? Does that line up with your experience, or?
Yeah, I'm not excited about the card. It's fine. We don't have it as our best white common, which the white removal, the removal for each color tends to be like the best common, but in this case it was not. And I don't think, I think that this is one of the things that as we see it play out, giving them a lotus petal, right? Giving them that treasure, that's a drawback. It can matter sometimes.
Yeah, my takeaway from it was that we talked about this on my stream yesterday too, which is Minimus Containment is the type of card that is in the necessary evil camp for me, where, you're not excited about it, but you do need ways to deal with opposing things. And the two things that stand out about Containment for me looking back are, one is that it hits non-land permanents, and there are a significant number of non-creatures that you actually do need to deal with in the format. So that helps bump it up a little bit. And the other thing is how you play it matters. A turn 3 Minimus Containment hurts. Like, you usually just ramp them into their 5-drop, and it actually matters. If you play it on turn 8 or 9 when your opponent has like 1 card left and 6 mana on the battlefield anyway, that is a lot less painful, where you're mitigating what you're giving them, right? And I think that, if you were to zoom in closer on players that kind of understood that they would be getting a little bit more out of their Minimus Containments than players who were like, hey, that's a pretty good 2-drop, containment it, and all of a sudden they're facing down a 4 or 5 a turn later. So I think the way that you play the card really matters. But I mean, the fact that it's a 3-mana removal spell that doesn't deal with 2 or 3 drops very well is definitely a knock on it. Shambling Ghast. It's actually pretty good.
Little guy.
Yeah. And another in a long list of 1-drops that matter, right? And I like that. That's where I want to be here. So I would still take Hobgoblin Captain over it, though. What about you?
Yeah, I would take the Captain here.
Celestial Unicorn is next. That's the 3/2 that gains counters when you gain life. Still like the Captain. Just I view them as comparable power level, but 2-drop over 3.
And the Unicorn is comparable when it ends up in a deck that enables it. The Hobgoblin Captain is good in a deck that has mountains. Yes,
exactly. Grim Wanderer is our first uncommon. That's the 1 in a black 5/3 with flash, and it can only be cast if a creature died this turn. It's pretty strong.
I didn't play that much with or against Grimwander. It seems like it's okay. I've definitely seen that card just be stuck in people's hands. And I remember in the LR versus Lowell showdown, BK had that in his deck, and multiple times he just couldn't cast it. So it's got some drawbacks. 5/3 is actually not that impressive of a stat line because it'll trade not down in terms of casting cost. That's part of the good thing. But if you put this in your deck, think of it more as like a 4 or a 5 drop in terms of timing, even though you can still have efficient turns before that. So, yeah, I think the card is fine. I would generally play it in my black decks. I just don't think it's better than Hobgoblin Captain, or even I think I would take Shambling Ghast over it to begin with.
Yeah, that's closer, but I definitely agree with the Captain. Wild Shape is next. I still don't know what it does. I've never played it. Next is Purple Worm. That's the 5GG 8/7 with Ward 2. But if something dies, then you can pay 2 less mana, so only 5 for that. Hey, it has keyword big. I mean, the thing's massive, and it can be kind of a pain to deal with. Definitely playable. You hate it?
I think it's just bad. I think it's basically, as we've learned from Morbid over, I think, between this and then the last time I remember seeing it, or the time I remember seeing it most in Innistrad, which was a long time ago, Morbid is just hard to set up, even in the decks that you think are going to. So I don't feel like you get the discount that often, and then it just didn't do as much in play as I kind of hoped. I thought this card ended up being pretty disappointing, actually.
Okay, yeah, I have it a little higher than you, but not a lot. I don't prioritize the card, and that kind of speaks the loudest, but I think it's okay. I put it in my green decks for sure. I would still take Captain here, though, honestly. Until we get to our mythic rare to end our AFR crack-a-packs, it's Zerial, Archduke of Avernus, and that is the two red 4 loyalty planeswalker. You can +1 it to give all your creatures +1/+0, and haste. You can 0 it to make devils that die and do damage to things. And then I don't remember what the emblem does, but you always win by the time that happens anyway. This card's sweet.
Yeah, Zerial is actually one of the planeswalkers I've liked a lot. Played with and against this card a few times, somehow more than Grimwander, where, so there's a while where you thought of, your opponent played a planeswalker. How do you feel about this game? And you were just like, well, I'm dead, right? Like there's just a lot of balmy planeswalkers that I remember Elspeth, right? The 4 mana Elspeth Knight Errant that ticked up to make a soldier or ticked up to give +3/+3. Like you just pack them up. Zerial is a lot harder to use in such an efficient manner, but gives you a lot of really good, powerful stuff if you can set it up correctly. So it's just an interesting card. Also, it's a pretty strong one. It's probably comparable to Grim Bounty, maybe a little bit better, but in this pack, I would certainly take Zerial. Yeah,
I think I have Zerial higher than that even. I would take Zerial over Grim Bounty pretty cleanly.
Yeah, I would take it over it, but I don't think it's much, much better, I guess. I think Hobgoblin, the Battlecry Goblin is better than Zerial, for example.
I think I would take Zerial. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe just the 2 mana thing would lean me back.
Well, it's better at 2 mana because you can't cast Zerial for 2 mana, and it's better at 6 mana and 4 mana. So
it's pretty good. Yeah, maybe you're right about that. But I think the reason that Zerial is a successful card in the format is because it fits the format so well, right? First, it's red, which is second best color. And then, or maybe even first, whatever, it's in the best color pair. And then also it adds to the board if you needed to. And then the next turn, it allows you to, really get in for a lot because you can play a creature, then plus Zerial and slam. And this is an aggressive, assertive format. This is a format that says, I'm going to put my game plan to you. What can you do about it? You have to react to me. And Zerial's perfect for that. So I have Zerial, near bomb. I mean, I don't think that on the surface it fills that level. Like you said, it pales in comparison to some of the other types of planeswalkers we've seen, even ones in this format like Lolth and stuff. But in the fact that it's in one of the best colors and it fits what the format's trying to do, I'm a fan. I would definitely slam it here. Okay, let's get in to the sunset. And this is a kind of a spicy one we've got here. We'll start off nice, though. If you could summarize the set in one sentence, what would it be? I said it's core set with a flavorful twist.
I said, different take, core set gameplay, delicious D&D flavor.
There you go. Yeah. It's funny because when they announced the set, I did not realize that it was going to be as core set-ish as it is. I thought, well, they've decided to do away with core set. They'll fill that Void some other way with some other product, one of the many things that they've been releasing lately. And we're just going to get an expert level set in the summer now. And that wasn't the case. This is very much a core set vibe with this D&D layer on top of it that added just enough to kind of make it interesting. And that, I remember feeling like that after the first couple of days of drafting. I was like, no, this is actually like a core set. And I just didn't know that going in, but it really does feel that way leaving it, right? And I think that hurt it a little bit because it didn't feel like it melded super well, right? Like we had kind of strangely complicated or weird mechanics added on to pretty straightforward cards for the most part. I mean, this is the least text we've had in the last 5 sets or whatever. And, but the dungeons thing really kind of stood out as like, this is weird, right? The die rolling ended up feeling, at least on Arena, I mean, you didn't even have to roll a die, like nothing really happened. The dungeons thing though was like complicated and like you're picking dungeons and which dungeon am I in and where am I at in it and what's the next step in it. Like that's a lot to add on to kind of a core set. And it felt like they really felt like that was going to be something special and went for it.
Yeah, it's funny. We did, I think, get a little tricked because one of the first things we saw was the dungeon stuff, like after our first scattered previews. And this is like one of the most complicated mechanics I've ever seen on its face.
Yeah.
And then after we saw it play out, it's like, wait, this just is a core set. After we see how the games play out, and it's like, wow, 3/3 Flyer is doing a lot more work than I remember them doing in most sets.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what's going on here.
That's right. And then it sort of revealed itself to us. And, I'm feeling a little bit torn on that now. My traditional stance has been that I like a core set. I like getting back to basics. I like the palette cleanser. I might be over that now. I think maybe I just want all expert sets. This one got a little boring.
I like a palette filler, not a palette cleanser.
You would like a follow-up meal for your... Yeah, I'm kind of with you, though. I don't know, man. I think maybe my opinion is just changing, and I kind of prefer to have all awesome in-depth stuff rather than the cleanser. Yeah,
I think that these sets, end up losing my interest a lot faster than the kind of expert level sets. And I'm not really debating the wisdom of which ones you should make more of or where they should land. I can just talk to you from my perspective. I stopped drafting AFR a lot sooner than Strixhaven or Kaldheim, which I put a lot of hours into those sets. And I put a fair amount into, AFR, but not a massive amount, not the same amount.
Yeah. And I mean, it is always tough because Luis and I like to give you, the listener, our opinions, but you know who we are. I mean, Luis is one of the best Magic players of all time, and I'm like a limited junkie, right? So I just draft every day. And, so that's a pretty narrow, like we don't represent the average player by any stretch of the imagination. So, Luis is alluding to, maybe it is correct to bring new players in or to give an on-ramp to people or whatever. And I wouldn't, if I worked at Wizards, my personal opinion, I would try to minimize that in my thought process and try to, figure out what's best for the overall player base or the part of the player base that they're trying to target for it. But I can say that for me, it's like, yeah, I think I'm kind of over the core sets now, I guess. And I'll move on a little sooner. What turned out to be, so normally, we use the questions or our awards or however you want to call these. And we have to augment this one because normally we ask what turned out to be the best archetypes. And we need to take one letter off of that because there was one archetype that stood out so far high and above everything else, and it was black-red. And this brings us to one of our first, this is like the first issue. This is the first problem that we have with the format, which is that, dude, I don't remember the last time I saw an archetype as dominant in this one. It warped the entire draft thing. It was the combination of this and how blue was so far behind. But I mean, it was ridiculous what it did to the draft portion.
Yeah, this is, I think, the only Sunset show I can remember where the what turned out to be the best archetypes question has one answer.
Yeah. Right? I mean, I can think of a couple others that were like, okay, but this, it stands so loudly that Black-Red was the deck of this format. And that's a problem, right? Like, you almost felt like you were making a mistake or giving up something when you didn't draft black-red. And then whenever you got matched up against black-red and you weren't playing black-red, it just felt like you were at a disadvantage. Even if they had a crappy black-red deck, it still felt like they were just, doing better than you.
Yeah, I mean, this was just the archetype, and it's not even clear to me that the archetype was anything less than first place, even when, like, say, there was 2.5 people drafting it.
Exactly. It was so deep. And, one of the key components to black-red, of course, was the sacrifice with price of loyalty. Because the truth is that there were kind of 2 versions of black-red, and you could even mix them and just, have some elements of both. But there was just the straight-up version, and then there's a sacrifice version. And those supported 2 drafters easily. And then the question really was, is there room for another player to be taking one of these colors away? And it felt like yes. And right away, you sit down to do the draft, and you first pick Grim Bounty, and you second pick a red card, and you're like, I remember just always thinking, like, normally I'd be really excited because I just first picked 2 really strong cards, and I'm on the best track. And I know I'll end up with a deck here, but I'm just on rails now, and I'm at the complete mercy of everything else that's going on. And it felt extra punishing because if you jumped off of black-red into another color pair, you were in a weakened version of that other color pair, and that just put you at such a disadvantage against the best deck. It just towered over everything. And then the combination, as we mentioned, of that with blue being particularly weak really hurt the format, I think. I think it warped it.
Yeah, the combination of blue being unplayable effectively, not like literally, but very close to it, like about as bad as I can remember over the past 5-6 years, and red black specifically being so strong meant that hurt the range of decks that you would see and draft, and that also strikes against replayability. Right,
and I think it also affects the fun factor when you're actually doing the draft. And then, of course, when you play it out, there was definitely, like, if you watch people's streams, there was definitely kind of the air of, I tried something cool and then I played against black-red and got punished for it. This sucks, and that is very real because there were defined archetypes pretty clearly defined for many of the other 2 color pairs that looked really cool and ended up being that none of them really stood out. Like, what would be number 2 as far as, like, defined archetypes standing out? I think I would say green, white, life gain was the one that was like, at least it came together sometimes.
I mean, and this is part of the whole core set experience as well, where you could have good black-white decks that had something to do with venture lightly, maybe not like fully, or more dedicated ones, and those could be fine. There, like the red-green decks, I think, were decent, like, at times. Like, you could have most 2 color pairs that didn't involve blue, and they would be solid decks. But black-red had the combination of not only being the best in terms of card quality, but it actually had one of the few, like, synergistic cores that it was actually worth going for. Because, green-white, when the life gain stuff came together, it was great. Mm-hmm. Your cleric class, paladin or unicorn and prosperous innkeeper decks could just do some kind of busted stuff. But at the end of the day, like, most of the decks are like good cards in my 2 colors, maybe more aggressive, maybe more controlling, who knows, but not really trading on, like, it's not like red green was like the pack tactics deck. It sometimes utilized pack tactics, but you weren't playing anything really weird to get that going. You were still just trying to present the best curve of creatures you can.
Yeah, and what it really comes down to is if any of you want to reverse engineer why or how this happens, it's pretty simple. Take the commons, like, ignore everything else, and then just see how deep, now that you know the format, how deep down the list to do, like, I'd be okay with putting this in my deck go. And if you look at black and red, it goes really far down the list, and you get spotted synergies at common, right? Sepulchre Ghoul is common, and you get price of loyalty, right? And, like, just those 2 cards together make up 2 cards that would be either fringe playable or mediocre on their own. And all of a sudden, they're cards that you actively want in the deck over and over again. And, like, other colors don't get that. The price of loyalty, like the conditional cards in other colors, just didn't have a friend, and they're just like, they are, near the bottom of the list and nobody ever plays them. And then if you go up to the uncommons and rares, how good are those? And it turns out that black red gets spotted the best ones of those too. And we're going to talk about some of those cards in here. But I mean, like when we get to what's the mythic uncommon, like I think there's one that stands out for me, and we'll talk about it there. But there's like 2 and 3 on the list, and they're also black and red. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to say I get really good commons plus a synergistic core plus I'm going to get spotted some of the best uncommons, I mean, you've laid the groundwork for an imbalanced format. All right, Luis, are you ready for this? You ready to take a little medicine here, buddy?
All right.
Yeah,
you know what? If I can dish it out, I can take it. Go nuts.
All right. Which cards were you most wrong about during the set reviews? Remember Fly? Remember when we had our argument about Fly?
All right. I will let you go, but I have a rebuttal. So
okay.
Go ahead.
And don't you dare try to hide behind blue is the worst color or something.
That's going to be part of it, but not the whole thing.
I mean, look, you had it at B-, I think is where you settled. It might be B+, but it was probably B-.
I think it was like, I had it at B-, you had it at D, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So where are you at on it now? What happened?
So I have Fly at probably like D. I think that your grade was right. I think that there was 2 main reasons for that are things that I will probably make this same kind of evaluation of cards in the future.
Okay.
The main one isn't that blue is bad. Blue is bad. That definitely doesn't help. But I think the main one is I gave them credit for making Venture a playable mechanic. It is basically not.
Yeah.
And if Fly was, give a creature flying when it hits draw a card, that card would be nuts, right?
Right.
Like clearly busted. But Fly, instead of Ventures, it turns out Venture is a lot worse than drawing a card. In fact, venturing is just not that strong. Yeah. And that was not something that I hadn't accounted for how weak it was going to be. I graded it worse than if it was drawing a card. I wasn't like crazy, but Venture, it turns out, was just not something worth going for. And I on set reviews, I'm going to mostly give them credit for making their mechanics playable. And I think Venture really missed the mark. I think it was too weak.
Yeah. Yeah. And my calculus was that we had seen a good amount of really strong removal and that Fly doesn't protect your creature in any way, not even at toughness or whatever. So like I figured, okay, my creature's going to I might get one Venture hit. And I also overrated Venture at the time. I think if I had to put a number on it, I would have said somewhere around a third of a card for venturing. And that was wrong. It's more like a sixth of a card or a fifth or somewhere in that. I mean, it is a minor effect as it turns out. Yeah. So there's that one. What about, other things that we are wrong about on the set review? Because it's fun to make fun of you for the Fly thing, but there was bigger picture stuff that I think both of us went along the same route that you were just describing, where we're kind of like, well, they're not going to put this in unless it's like a thing. And then it was like, no, they put it in and it's not a thing. The one that just jumps out to me, and it's funny because you don't even think about it, right, is rolling dice, like cards that cared about that. They weren't even a factor. The 1/3 guy, the 1/3 for one in a red, like, come on. Right.
I think that as much as you deservedly get to dunk on me for Fly, like all of the cards in this vein of that had to do with rolling dice, that had to do with venturing, were just weaker than we thought because again, we just thought that the mechanics would play. And like, look, imagine Feywild Trickster, right? The 2 and a blue 2/2 that makes a 1/1 whenever you roll a dice. Like that card would be a top tier build around in most sets where it's a 3-mana 2/2 that makes a 1/1 flyer when you do X, where X is like the set mechanic. Or one of the set mechanics.
Right.
It's just not good in this set. And so I think part of the reason blue is so weak is that die rolling and venturing kind of didn't get there. So a lot of blue's cards where presumably power points are being put, because when you design a set, you don't have like a budget of like literal you have 300 power points, but like where you can put powerful things. Like every color is going to want to have some really good uncommons and commons and some medium ones and some bad ones. The bad ones aren't even that bad these days, but you don't get to make every common a Grim Bounty. That obviously wouldn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Blue's powerful slots are used on mechanics, cards that play with these mechanics that aren't worth going after. And as a result, Blue ends up kind of sucking. And these, I bet if you went through our ratings, you could bump like a letter grade off of every card that mentioned rolling a die or venturing, and it would be like pretty close to correct.
Yep. And that means that there's a lot of cards in the set that are, underperforming, especially those key cards that you mentioned, like the Feywild Trickster and stuff, which I think we probably gave it like a B or something. And it looked excellent. And those didn't live up. The one I was mentioning before was the Dwarf, the 1 in a red 1/3, and it pings them whenever you roll a die. That's the type of card that you can look at and go, hey, nobody else wants this. I can probably get them late. If I can build the die roll deck, that could be a nice little 2-drop. Good little blocker, adds up a few damage as the game piles on. And that's a card that I might look at as an underdrafted card. It was trash. I mean, it was like utterly unplayable. And that was only one of them. Another good example of something that you're talking about is the venture stuff. I think it was on a video or a stream, I can't remember, but I drafted blue-white ventures and I had 2 Hama Pashar. That's the uncommon that gets you the double
yeah,
ventures.
I remember taking that one early and really feeling punished for that.
Yeah. And I actually asked my chat or the video, I can't remember. I said, this wasn't that long ago. And I was like, let's see how many times, because it was basically turbo ventures. Like I had 4 Cloister Gargoyle, 4 in that deck, right? I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
And, and the Veteran Dungeoneer and all that stuff. So let's see if I venture through the whole dungeon, does it matter? Let's see if it affects my wins. Is that a thing? And it turns out it didn't. I mean, it just wasn't impactful enough. If I got 2 of the gargoyles in the air, then yeah, that was great. But, that was because the gargoyles themselves, not the value that I got from the venturing. And that's again with even doubling it a lot of the time. And that to me means that it didn't live up. So that's that. And like you said, across the board, you can probably knock significant rating off for all of those cards. What were the most underrated cards? I know one that really stands out as underrated, at least this could be a spot where we gain something really from 17 lands and from the data, is Vampire Spawn.
Yeah, Vampire Spawn ended up, Mini Siege Rhino ended up doing a lot of good work. And turns out it was just a card you wanted in all your decks. It was something that it really got the job done. I would say Deadly Dispute's another one that getting that extra treasure ended up being taking village rights and really bumping it to the next level. Because look at it from the start. When you cast village rights, paying 1 more mana to make a treasure is actually break even mana wise, right? Mm-hmm. Like you do get some real disadvantages of you're not always going to have it up with only 1 mana. It's if it's less efficient on turns, where you wouldn't have that extra mana to front it to spare to begin with. Mm-hmm. But overall, it's not that different. And then if you don't need that extra mana on the turn you spend it, you end up plus a treasure, which is really, really big. So Deadly Dispute certainly shot up in the power rankings, even as like we were realizing how good like the red black sack stuff was. But even without that, I think Deadly Dispute probably deserved a higher grade to begin with.
Definitely. It has moved up a lot. It also took me a little while to realize that you could sack artifacts to it. Therefore, you can sack treasure to it. And that, that's a big deal too.
Yeah.
So definitely that one. And then, of course, Price of Loyalty ended up being, kind of a format defining type common. And, we mentioned it. I mean, it wasn't like it was not on our radar. We said, hey, look, there's a common sack outlet and there's this thing that does come together sometimes. But it ended up really it's a little bit tough to parse out because, I think if you just look at the 17 lands data, it'll actually show that it's the highest win percentage common in red. But, that is in decks that played it, right? And most decks didn't just run one without any ability to sacrifice stuff. So, it kind of, you have to kind of tweak that a little bit to, of the decks that played this, it performed super well. But that's valuable information as well. What were the most controversial cards that we
Well,
talked about.
One that specifically interacted with our grade was Hand of Vecna, which I think we gave it a C plus, if I remember correctly. And this is the equipment that you can pay 2 or 1 life for every card in your hand to equip, and it gives the creature +X. Well, it gives the creature at the beginning of combat, it gets +X for X number of cards in your hand. Pretty big difference there. Mm-hmm. I still maintain that this card's not that good. Yes, it has times when it's going to be really good. So there are games where you go 2-drop into this and it's just like, how is this card not an A? This card is just steamrolling them. Or better yet, you put it on like a Steadfast Paladin, it's got lifelink, and then it's just completely game over.
Right.
But I mean, this is a card I, again, played with and against a fair amount. And sometimes you draw it and you have 2 other cards in your hand and it's turn 5 and it's just like, wow, this card is not good. Or you're getting attacked. It doesn't help you on defense. They kill your creature and you're down 5 life. Like, there's a lot of drawbacks with this card too. People thought we were nuts for not giving it like a B or B plus, and I even saw some people saying it was better than that. And I just don't agree and still don't agree. And the win rates on 17 lands also they have it at slightly lower than the average win rate of a 17 lands user, which does not indicate to me that it's a very good card.
Yeah. That to me, Hand of Vecna is a classic BCSM candidate, best case scenario mentality. The times when you make one of those curve out plays that you described, it stands out as like, holy crap, this card is hard to beat. I need to have removal. If I don't, I'm just going to die to it in like 3 turns and the game's over. And that really stands out in your brain as like, holy crap, that was amazing. And it's the times when you draw it and you have 0 or 1 cards in hand, or you're behind on board, or you equip it and they kill the thing, right? That your brain kind of goes, whatever. They don't stand out as much. But the numbers do. And, it has some major, major drawbacks. What card had your favorite artwork?
I liked Meteor Swarm by Olivier Bernard or Oliver Bernard. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. It's a little funny because the perspective has the meteors coming towards the person casting it is what it looks like. But I still think it's pretty epic art. Plus, every time I look at that card, I remember, I just think of, Ethan and Ben and Alex getting crushed under the weight of the meteors and as it carried me to a 3-0 victory.
Oh, yeah, that was beautiful. My favorite artwork was Lurking Roper, mm-hmm. which is, kind of like an angry looking kind of demon tree thing, which I really liked. And that was by Andrew Marr. And I also have to say that I liked kind of anything that had a beholder on it, because this was my first, exposure to this type of thing. And I just love it. Like, it's just like, it's all mouth and eyeballs and it's funny. And it has like kind of a comical, like it's shooting lasers out of its eyes thing. But like a good one would be Baleful Beholder. By Lars Grant West, as just that is sweet. Like, that is exactly what a magic monster should look like. And I want to know your take on this, Luis. Are they going to keep them, or is it kosher for them to, like, can I see more beholders but not in D&D sets, or do they need to kind of stay in that?
I think they could throw a beholder into Magic and it wouldn't be crazy at all. Okay. Like, beholders are pretty D&D, but I wouldn't find it completely immersion breaking. Like, a beholder's not that much weirder than, a Gruul Nodorog, whatever that is, like that show, there's a lot of weirdly named monsters in different Magic sets. And I don't think it's like it's a big deal if it does.
Okay. Put me down for wanting to see more beholders then.
Yes, it does appear to me that we will not be getting crossovers like this actually in the future. Like, I don't think we're going to get another D&D set.
Okay.
Is I think what they said. So
okay, well,
that mean individual things can't sneak in.
Yeah, I hope we see some more beholders. They're just cool. What were the best build around cards in this set? Funny enough, this set was really low on build arounds. That clearly wasn't what they were going for. Strictly build around type stuff. They definitely had some synergies that they went for that, as we mentioned before, didn't really pan out in many cases. But straight up build arounds, there weren't that many. But the ones that they did have, the 2 in particular that I thought of, they were awesome. The first one that came to mind was Teleportation Circle, which I loved. that was one of the few cards I could open that would really, I'd sit up in my seat like, okay, it's on, give me some Priests of Ancient Lords. Let's do this. And it didn't hurt that it was really good. Like Teleportation Circle did work. It wasn't one of those like fringe build arounds that you like really hope it comes together. White was well suited for it. There was some absolutely great stuff in green as well. And you could really go off with it. So that was my kind of number one, but I can't not mention Splinter Twin combo, right? Delina
oh, yeah.
was like, you could just play it in your deck and it was powerful. So it's not like a strict build around, but this was one of the coolest combos in Limited ever. Like, this is awesome. I remember the first time that you talked about it on the show and I hadn't heard of it yet. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And I did it, by the way, Luis. I drafted that deck and I got to do it. The really funny part is I had 2 Pixie Guides out and I had put a boots, what's it called? Boots, haste boots in my deck. And so, cause I wanted to be able to play Delina nice. And get in there, right? So that they couldn't use sorcery speed removal on my combo. And I did. And so I roll the 2 dice plus the 2 extra dice plus the 1. And it's like 4, 4, 16. I'm like, okay, we get to do it again. And so I did it. And then it's funny because I think I had 5. And on Arena, instead of rolling like die, it just spews a bunch of them around and shows you the highest one. And I missed on that one. I hit on the one with like 2, 3, and 4 or whatever. And I somehow missed. I don't know what the odds are of me missing at that point, but I didn't hit. And I was so disappointed until I realized that it gave me exactly lethal. So I went off for the exact amount that I needed to just win that turn anyway and not have to sit through a whole bunch of extra die rolls. So
yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
They actually had to change the wording on Delina to make it so you couldn't, otherwise that I think you were able to stop it. Otherwise it would have gone infinite.
Oh, like it would have just, cause yeah, it made me take action every time. Maybe that was it.
Yeah. And they made it a May. I think this is one of the unlike the actual Splinter Twin combo, the original one, this is actually one that they saw coming.
Yeah, exactly. But this is seriously one of the coolest combos you could do in Limited, right?
Oh yeah, it's got a lot of cool stuff going on with it.
Yeah. So Delina and Teleportation Circle for best build arounds. What card still looks good when you read it? Like you pick it up and you're like, this card is good, but it just doesn't make the cut. It's not quite good enough. And for me, holy smokes, there was a good example of this in the set, and it's Drider. Which, if I pick up that card and I read it, I'm like, this is great. It's got all the things. It has reach. It makes things. It has to be blocked. Yeah, the 3 toughness is a little bit of a pain. But man, this card is good if you can get it through. And even if you can't, it's good on defense. It trades for everything. And it just never worked. Ever. It just, like, I think I made a couple, early in the format, I took it high. I always played it. And I think I made the spiders or whatever they are like twice ever or something. The card just flopped.
I've got a two for this. One is Fly, because I still look at Fly and think like, what
efficient.
The other for me is the Cridle of Baldur's Gate, the blue-black legend. Just looks sweet. It's this little saboteur, does some cool stuff. You can make things unblockable, pings them, gets a little value. It doesn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how that happens. Because it's like, I still can't read Drider. Oh, I just figured it out. This is what we missed, Luis. Fly on Drider. That's what we needed. We could even have Cridle in that deck, too. Good God, we broke it. Although, I probably won't draft again, so bummer. Was this a Prince or a Pauper set?
This is actually kind of weird. You put Pauper. I don't think I fully agree with that. Like the black-red deck, yes, could kill everything. Like Grim Bounties, and Price of Loyalties and all that. But the rares were pretty ridiculous. I actually think this is more of a Prince set.
I think that the rares decided the outcome of the game more so than the commons and uncommons.
Well, no, because that's not a good way to figure out Prince or Pauper. Because rares are never going to decide the game more than the commons because they're outnumbered by so much. But I know what you're getting at. I think the proportion of the times rares decide the game is greater than it would be for sets where we would consider it a Pauper set, right? I don't know what the where the line is exactly, but I feel like enough of the games were ended by like the high rarity cards here that I feel like it edges towards a print set, but it's on the low end of that range.
Interesting. I want to know what our listeners think, because you're right. It's very close. I mean, they have a cycle of 5 mythic dragons. They have uncommon dragons. You know, there's a lot of kind of big splashy stuff. Whenever you have
a cycle of like mythic dragons that are all incredibly good, like you just have like a lot of even just at rare, you know, cards that are quite strong. Blue actually did pretty well in this respect, but
very well.
Overall, like, you know, there was enough. There were enough good rares that I feel like rares dictated the outcome of a lot of my games.
Okay, yeah, no, that does make sense. I think it's close. What's the "it's a bad card but I love it anyway" award winner? I think Flumph is the card that comes to mind for me. I mean, I'm a big sucker for cards like that. You know, it's cool, it's funny. I've never heard that word before, and I like it. So I would give it to Flumph. What would you say?
The funny thing for me is that I think 2 of the cards we mentioned previously are actually like on this list. Fly, I still just am holding a torch for this. And then Drider, actually. Drider was one of the ones that did also look good to me, and I wanted to get work, and then it basically didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the other card that comes to mind for me is Treasure Chest. You know, which was not worth it. And even had the fail case that was just abject, like you probably just lose the game level disaster, but it was cool. It was funny, and it was only a one shot, you know, to just completely lose. So I like that. But I'm going to stick with the jellyfish. It's Flump for me. What was the
Flump is just such a cool name.
It really is. Like, I don't know. I don't really get it still, but I really like it. I literally never won with it, but it always seems to beat me card for you.
For me, I would say Rally Maneuver, which is a card that has a lot of power to it, though I do recall seeing a Rally Maneuver that really worked out poorly in one of the drafts we did.
Yes. But oh god, it did.
I think that Rally Maneuver is one of the cards that has a lot of value, but never. I got wrecked by it more often than I wrecked other people with it, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah. For me, I think I would say Wizard's Spellbook. That's that 7-mana blue artifact thing.
That was a good card.
Yeah, it was a good card. And every time I tried to play it, it just was like medium for me. Like, it felt like it always did the thing that I didn't want it to do. And when other people play it, they're just going off. And I'm like, I feel like an avalanche of cards is coming down on me. I don't know. It just never came together for me. And then at some point I mostly stopped drafting blue, so that the dream was dead. Right. Yeah. This is a big one.
It is crazy to me that Wizard Spellbook was like twice as good as we thought because it could steal from their graveyard too. And we just didn't realize it the first time we read that.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that early, right?
Yeah.
What was my opponent played this, so now I must win or quit Magic forever card.
So Zach Marshmallow on Twitter definitely had the best answer, which was Island. Your opponent plays an island, you're like, well, gotta win this one.
Yeah, I can't lose this. Gotta quit Magic.
For me, it's Barbarian Class.
Oh yeah,
that card was so bad, and it was an affront to me whenever someone got it together and was actually able to win with it. Yeah,
which is very rare. But people still played it. I played against it on the stream yesterday. Like, they just never learned. For me though, the card was, like, I agree that Zach's answer of Island was the best, but it was Silver Raven. Like, turn 1 Island Silver Raven, and I'm like, okay, that card just didn't fit into the format. Like, there might have been some specific reason to play it in some deck, but for the most part, it was just like the artifacts thing wasn't there. It doesn't get bigger. The scry one isn't enough. And you're playing blue, and you're playing like a really underpowered card in blue. I gotta win this thing now. So that award for me goes to Silver Raven. What was the biggest groan test?
For me, it was really just any of the Mythic Dragons. You didn't really even have that much time to groan because the game was over. Like, they'd play, Inferno of the Star Mounts and just clock you for 6 and then 10 the next turn, or Imrith Desert Doom or what have you.
Yeah, those were massive. The one that really I'm doing, like, I know this is just really powerful card, but every time, I mean, I think I audibly groaned when my opponent played this, was Ranger Class. because it's such a narrow card type to try to answer being an enchantment. And it's so strong because you can just fall behind to its, initial ability so quickly. And then even if you ever manage to like clear away enough stuff so that you weren't just getting ran over by the extra counters and all that, then they just leveled it up and started getting a bunch of value off of it. And it's like, how am I supposed to get out from underneath this? And, when you look back, you're like, you paid 2 mana for this card? Like, how is this even a thing? Right. And so when people played that, there were many decks that I had, probably mostly in black-red, where they go Ranger class, and I'm like, okay, can't ever remove it. GG, right? Like there's just nothing I can do from this point, and that's kind of the recipe for a grown test.
I think Ranger class is a good example because you didn't lose the game in 3 turns to Ranger class. You didn't even lose it in 5 turns a lot of the time, but you lost the game.
But you lost the game, and it was
you weren't going to win, but you got to play the game for a while. Got to, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you know how it is. Sometimes they play out a big bomb and you're like, hey, I've got a Grim Bounty in this deck. Let's just rip that thing the one time and we can, you draw a card, draw a spell, and you're like, oh, we're going to find it. We're going to do it. But when they play an enchantment, a lot of, some color pairs have no answers. If you're playing best of one, it's not like you can be like, haha, I'm going to bring in my Dawnbringer Cleric. It's like, no, you're just losing to it and moving on. What was the most frustrating bad card to lose to? Air quotes bad card, right? It can be bad. It can be whatever. What were you not miss playing against, or maybe just a card that annoyed you?
Thieves' Tools for me, because I don't think the card was good. I do think Thieves' Tools was bad. But if you're at like 8 life and they play a Thieves' Tools, often that does mean like, hey, under a pretty big clock here, they've got even a 2/2 is going to be an unstoppable 4-turn clock unless I have removal. So I think that Thieves' Tools was one of the ones that like you lost in a kind of out of your control way, it felt like.
Definitely. And it's the kind of card, and this is really what we get at with this one, which is that you shouldn't be playing that, but you're beating me with it. And mine, which also fits that description, was Long Rest, which is the, triple green X spell that gets a bunch of stuff back from the graveyard. That card is way too slow for this format. I've killed people many times the turn after they're like long rest for 3 or whatever. And then I'm like, cool, kill you. Right. That happens all the time. The card is really poorly matched for how almost all the decks are built and what you expect to face. Yet, if you find yourself in a late game situation where you're both top decking, okay, just one more thing, I'm getting close. And then they go long rest for 3 or 4 or whatever, get back half their graveyard and you're just like, womp. And yeah, you're going to lose at that point. What was the bombiest bomb? The card you hoping to open the most? Was there one?
I mean, as you said here, Lolth, the Planeswalker, was number 1 on 17 lands. Meteor Swarm felt like probably the card I would just pick to open. Mm-hmm. Though I could see Lolth for sure. Part of the thing was like with Meteor Swarm is like, yes, the one thing it asks of you is triple red. That's like the only actual cost associated with the card. Otherwise, it's like, well, for 5 mana, you killed their 2 best creatures. For 6 mana, you killed 3 creatures, maybe not the 3 best because at this point you're doing a little less damage. And worst comes to worst, for 4 mana, you kill a creature. But most of the time, that card acted as Plague Wind. I think you would cast it for anywhere between 5 to 6 mana usually, and they would pick up all their creatures virtually and put them in the graveyard.
Would any of the Mythic Dragons?
Yeah, I mean, any of those cards.
Bomb?
Yeah, you don't feel bad about opening any of those cards either. Like they're just completely out of control good.
I don't care about the stats. We're going to give it to Meteor Swarm because it felt the most devastating when you cast it. All right, so the best common for each color. White, Priest of Ancient Lore. Not close, right? Pretty easy.
I don't think that's close, actually. Yeah. I think that Steadfast Paladin actually is a contender there. But okay. But I think that I do think close but clear, I guess, is maybe a good way to put
close
it.
But clear,
I do think the Priest is better, but I do think that the Paladin's not that far behind.
And I'm still a big fan of You Hear Something on Watch. Blue, Ginny Windseer.
Yeah. I think Charmed Sleep was terrible. It just didn't work out for a lot of reasons.
Really bad, yeah. Black Grim Bounty.
Mm-hmm. Not controversial.
Right. Red, Dragon's Fire. But if you really wanted to get spicy, you could make an argument for price of loyalty.
You can't. I think in good conscience, take Dragonfire over Price early. There are times when you could do it later.
You can't take Dragonfire over Price.
Sorry, other way around. You can't take Price over Dragonfire early. Like
that's what I thought too.
They're comparable when Price works perfectly, it's a little bit better, but it's honestly not even that much better. Dragonfire is still just 2 mana to kill anything.
Right. And this format ended up being like it killed a ton of stuff. Yeah.
And then there's, of course, times when Price doesn't actually do the thing you want it to do. So, yeah, Dragonfire clearly the best. I think Price was number 2, though.
Okay. And then green, I have Owlbear.
Of course you do. You have all the Owlbears. That's all you have is Owlbears.
Yeah, you wouldn't put like Spoils above it or something, right?
No, I would. I think that's second, but I think I would take Owlbear, and then I think actually it's the Hill Giant Erdgorger third. That card
Gorgeous George, our boy. That card ended up being dope. The only thing that really held it back was Price of Loyalty. Pretty annoying. All right, this is a big one. We mentioned it before. What is a mythic uncommon for this set? For me, only one card jumped into my mind as this particular award, which is Battlecry Goblin.
Yeah, Battlecry Goblin is unquestionably the mythic uncommon. I think that card is just, again, it's good on turn 2. It's good on turn 4. It just starts becoming absurd when you have 6 or more mana. And it makes its own army, pumps the whole army. It just does everything you want out of a card. It's really hard to end up figuring out how do you make a card that's better at more points in the game, but also as good as it is when it's at its best. So, like a card like Dragonfire is just a very good card. It's never going to be bad. But the high end isn't there like it is for Battlecry Goblin. And so Battlecry Goblin, I think, takes the cake. I do like, Kalane, the painter, the red-black painter, was also quite strong. Skullport Merchant was good. Power Word Kill, of course. You can't go wrong with that card. But for me, it's Battlecry Goblin.
So I just took a quick look at the top listings on 17 lands for uncommon for games in hand win rate. And basically the top 3 are all tied. They're within like 0.3% of each other, so rounding errors at the most. And they are Battlecry Goblin, Skullport Merchant, and Power Word Kill. The next one is Warlock class, and the next one after that is Black Dragon. The next one after that is Kalane. That's 6 in a row, uncommons, and they're all black or red. Whoops.
You do know that's also confounded by the fact that because black and red is the best, the black red commons and uncommons are going to win more. But
sure. But so I guess I would view those as the same thing, I guess.
Well, they kind of compound. Of course, like the black and red got the best uncommons and commons. So the uncommons and commons win the most, but also because they win the most, the black and red uncommons and commons win the most. Like it's kind of circular, but
right. The
good ones pull up all the other ones too. Mm-hmm. Because like look at like what's a mediocre black or red common, like the Valor Singer, right? The 3 mana 2/3. Like that card is gonna be in decks that win a lot. Like you can further dive into it by looking at like win rates of when you actually draw the card, of course. But a lot of the cards I think are gonna be pulled up by the fact that they have a lot of good, like superstars still like getting helped by role players, right? Like Michael Jordan was better because he had Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman. See, I know a little bit about sports too.
That was really good. You nailed it. Yeah. Okay.
Those guys are also like Hall of Famers, right? So
They are. Yes. They're the best version of role players, but still.
But I mean, I know better than most that not all Hall of Famers are created equal. So
also true. So here, all right. So that being said, I'm looking at the top 10 uncommons. And so the first 6 are Power Kill, Skullport Merchant, Battlecry Goblin, Warlock class, Black Dragon, Kalane. So that's 6. Then there's Hunter's Mark. Good job. And then number 8 is Red Dragon. Number 9 is Ray of Enfeeblement. And number 10 is Reaper's Talisman. 9 out of the top 10 uncommons are either red, black, or black and red. Come on, like that is like even if it's being dragged up by the commons or they're the fact that they're good together or whatever, that is insane, right? Like one card made it in to bump them off. There wasn't something amazing in there. Incredible. Wow. Okay, so that about sums that up. But it does go to Battlecry Goblin. I don't care what anybody says.
Of course, yes.
What is the worst card in the set? The biggest blank, the most last picked?
Both Sorcerer and Bard class can kind of share the title. They're both of these classes that basically had no effect on the game. And do you have a bunch of legendary creatures? No. Okay, well, this Bard class doesn't do anything. Do you have a bunch of creatures plus need to cast expensive spells? I don't even know what Sorcerer class is trying to do. I think Bard class is I don't think Bard class is a poor design. Bard class is a constructed card. There are constructed decks that use this card and have a lot of fun with it. I think Sorcerer class is just a horrendous design. I don't really understand what the input or output is kind of supposed to be. It just does not seem like it seems like a baffling card. Devour Intellect also pretty bad. This is the 1 black mana sorcery. They discard a card, but if you spent a treasure on it, you get to look at their hand and make them discard a card.
Yeah. Ooh. I don't think I ever got hit by that. Yeah, I like Sorcerer class for just get out of here. I mean, it's really extra tough because they're gold cards too. All right, this is big. Which card was the most begrudgingly playable?
Well, what is your favorite flavor of Beholder? Because it's Baleful Beholder or Eyes of the Beholder. They're both 6 mana. They both have a real effect on the board. Killing a creature or putting a 6/5 into play with another effect. Those are both totally valid effects. And there were some sets, like I've drafted sets, where this would be one of your top 10 cards in your deck. Like, don't get me wrong, right? Like, you go back to Stronghold, 20 years ago, and we're talking good stuff. But in this day and age, these are the kind of cards that I think are the most begrudgingly playable. Oh,
definitely. I love it that we both picked some form of Beholder. Is there a card that you're going to miss drafting?
Tiamat was fun. I got to draft Tiamat once, the 5-color dragon in a black-green treasures deck, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, for me, it is Teleportation Circle. Didn't come up that often as a rare, but when it did, I was excited. I really felt like it was a fun build around. I'll miss it. What was the LSV-ist card and the Martialist card?
I like Horde Robber for me. It's like an understated creature that gets you a tiny bit of value if it connects. And
the rich get richer?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And justify playing your +2/+0 Rapier and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I like it. Mine was Owlbear. Come on, man. Give me that value. Yeah, big fat 2-for-1. I love that. What was my soapboxiest card? It was obviously Fly. We've already done it.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm taking the high road. We talked about it. We're good.
Taking the high road.
Yeah. Yeah, you should take a lesson. What card do you still have to read when it's cast against you?
Vorpal Sword. I don't really know exactly how much it costs. I think it has to hit me. It has Death Touch always. I don't know.
Yes, those are true. And it's 8. For me, it was Volo. I finally figured it out. But like Volo, the first time you read the text on Volo, it's a lot. It's like, wait a second. I remember the first time I read it was on the show, I think. And I was just like, wait, what? Whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. When you play it, it does become more intuitive. You're like, okay, I just need to know what's in my yard and what's on the board, and it can't match up. But every time I drafted that early, I was like, what the hell does this thing do? What was your most drafted card on MTGO? This is kind of a legacy pick because I don't actually know. I don't play on Magic Online very much, and I don't have a listing or whatever for Arena. But I would, if I had to guess, because it's always like a decent card that's a little bit undervalued by people that you kind of just pick up, and it would probably be like Veteran Dungeoneer. I just like that card a lot. I ended up taking it all the time.
Yeah, I think Price of Loyalty is actually competitive for me. I drafted a lot of Price of Loyalties. The card did end up being like taken very highly, but I just had multiple drafts where I had 4 or 5, so I think I ended up with a fair amount. I guess in reality, it probably is a very mid-range common of, whatever that might be, Veteran Engineers, like that kind of class. But Price of Loyalty is one that at least stands out for me.
All right, let's get into the meat of it here, Luis. From a design and development aspect, how did this sit fair? How are the mechanics? What were some of the wins and what were some of the losses?
So the set had a bunch of mechanics. I think that they undershot on some of them in a way that's actually harmful. Like, not everything has to be the best, right? Some things can be good, some things can be bad, some things can be medium, whatever. But die rolling and venture specifically were both, I think, not good or fun enough. And the die rolling one I give a little bit more credit to because, first of all, I know a lot of people kind of hated die rolling, but I don't think that's necessarily a reason not to do the mechanic. Like, it's okay to evoke strong feelings from people, and if some people hate it and other people love it, that's fine. The problem, I think, was it mitigated the hate a little because people, once they played with it, were like, oh, this isn't like I'm rolling a die where, if I roll a 1 through 5, it's terrible for me. But if I roll a 16 through 20, it's amazing for me. You're rolling a die where it's like 1 through 9 is okay. 10 through 19 is okay +1. And then 20 is okay +2. Like, it's not that much better. It's like, do I get 1 treasure, 2 treasures, or 3 treasures? Do I get +1 +0, +2 +0, or +3 +0? And the +3 +0 is only 5% of the time. How excited were you when you rolled a die? You weren't that excited because it was actually it almost felt like a reverse lottery where you play your Morningstar, right? And you're like, well, half the time I'll get it equipped and that'll be great. And half the time I won't, that'll be kind of sucky, but I feel kind of punished when I don't get it, but I don't feel excited when I do get it. And I think that's where a lot of these cards landed. So they just didn't evoke that much excitement. And then some people, I think, still hated the fact that there was dice rolling in their game of Magic, which I don't share that, but people feel the way they feel.
Yeah, and it was there was a lot of arguments from the professionals at the time of going like, well, this game has variance built into it, right? And but people had a visceral reaction to having to be so blatant.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't work in draft, and this is what we're focusing on, right? We're talking about booster draft. You really weren't supposed to pick the die roll cards or try to build around them or focus on them. And I think that's a failure. I think when you have a mechanic that spans multiple colors and is a major mechanic of those 2 colors, and you're not supposed to do it, that you missed. That's not what you want. Venture, I think, is even worse. And the reason I think Venture is worse is they made 3 dungeons. Only one of them was worth going to. Like, I don't know what the actual stats were, and I wonder if 17 Lands has this. I haven't tried to look. When someone put Resolved Adventure ability, what percentage of the time do they go to the Lost Mine of Phandelver versus the other 2?
Yeah, I still have it at 85.
85, 10, 5 or something like that?
Yeah,
or 85,
maybe it might be 95, 5. Like, it was so high that you went into the middle dungeon.
And again, like, you're trying this wild mechanic. Getting the balancing on this is tough. I'm not saying this is an easy job. It's just not an easy job, Right. You've got to design these dungeons, test all the permutations of like, oh, what if they go there? What if they go there? What if they go there? But guess what? The average effect of going into a dungeon room was slightly worse than Scry 1, I think, on average, Yep. or maybe close to Scry 1. It just wasn't particularly good. And what was your excitement level when you were venturing through a dungeon? It wasn't high. Maybe when you got towards the end, especially if you're going through the Mad Mage, right? The Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and you're like, at the end, I'm going to draw 3 cards and play them for free. Sure, I had some fun doing that some of the time, but I remember early on in the format, I was streaming and I was like, wow, my next Turbo Venture, I'm going to go to Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And Andrew Cuneo was watching, and Andrew Cuneo was very good. And he was like, you should never go through Dungeon of the Mad Mage. By the time you go through it, you could have just gone through Lost Mine of Phandelver twice, and that's about the same. Yeah. And like, that's not exactly true because you go like seven ventures gets you a little bit more in dungeon than it does in the Lost Mine. But the point does remain, you basically shouldn't do that. And that was the most fun one. And then the Tomb of Annihilation, it had a good flavor fit. And I'll talk about the flavor in a second because that is definitely part of the set. But that one was pretty punishing. And yes, it would have been cool if this was like, hey, this is the drawback dungeon, but if you can, arrange things right, you can pay for those drawbacks. That's just not how it played out. It wasn't strong enough. There weren't enough payoffs for it or cards that worked well with it. Also, like, it wasn't actually even that punishing because it's like lose 2 life. It's like, sacrifice a creature or discard a card or lose 2 life. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to choose to lose 2 life. Like,
right. That happened all the time. Yeah, especially by the time that was relevant.
Or like the theme of like, if you go through the oubliette, you speed run through the dungeon, but you have to pay a high cost. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, except the cost you pay is massive. Discard a card, sacrifice a creature, and you get a 4/4 at the end of it. Like, the balancing was off, and that did hurt that. And I've said many times, balance isn't the most important thing fun is. I think the balance of the dungeons led to them being not that fun. I think the venture mechanic was just not that fun.
Do you think that they had to aim low so that they didn't make a mistake?
Yeah, I mean, this is why design is tough. When you aim high, you get Thorn of Eldraine and everyone's mad for 2 years, right? Yep. When you aim low, you get, the last couple sets and this is going a little more broadly than limited, but I think sets going lower power level does help kind of get standard back to a more reasonable place. But when it comes to limited, a low power set is fine because it's all relative. Like obviously you want to play with cards that are exciting, but you can have a low powered constructed set that's awesome and limited. That's happened many times. When you have a mechanic as far out there as die rolling or venture, I can understand not wanting to aim too high. And guess what? They did not aim too high. I can verify that.
Yeah. I also wonder if there is part of them that wouldn't be unhappy to have venture kind of stay within the realm of this set rather than be a thing that we're playing with forever in Commander and older formats and cubes. Like the idea of always needing these 3 dungeon cards, these if you're playing in paper and you don't have the dungeon cards, it's like you have to look it up on your phone. I mean, it is really like clunky, to do this. And I just wonder if they were like, because one thing we'll sometimes see on a mechanic that doesn't really resonate or doesn't hit home is that there's clearly like a mythic rare that they push to really do that one mechanic. And that's the one card that kind of lives on that has that. And we didn't have that here either.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And again, I understand the kind of impetus to not go too high on these kind of really far out there mechanics, but I'm sorry to say that they missed. They went too low. The correct approach to drafting Adventures in the Forgotten Realms is to largely ignore the set mechanics and draft the most powerful cards. And that in and of itself is more of the core set experience, but it's just still disappointing because, look, for the people who draft a couple times and they take all the venture cards and they go 1 and 2 and they have a good time, that's totally fine. That's part of the range of experiences. And that's where flavor matters a lot, which again, I'm still going to get to. But for people who enjoy discovering draft formats and drafting a bunch, you soon learn or are told if your friends are watching you or you're watching a streamer draft, oh yeah, you're supposed to ignore the Hama Pashar, like uncommon build around that uses the set mechanic and supposed to take the 4-mana 3/3 flyer, which in most expert level sets would not be the case, not by a long shot.
Right.
And I think that is, that really kind of reduces my desire to play this set. And this is part of why this set kind of fell flat for me. So die rolling and venture missing, I think really sucks. The choose your adventure stuff, like you come across a river or whatever. I thought that was cool. Cool flavor. Flexible cards are cool. Again, these cards weren't that good. It's actually funny how underpowered these were too now that I think about it, but I still think it was okay. And I thought classes were cool, like Warlock class and stuff like that. I think those cards played pretty well. Like it is fun to level up your thing and to be and have it get better over time. And, they ended up, I think, landing in a space where some of them are very good. Some of them aren't that good. It's not like the mechanic itself dictates how good or bad it is, but I think the classes played out fairly well.
Same. I wouldn't hate seeing that card type come back, right? It reminds you of Sagas, but there's a mana component to it. It's pretty simple design, but it has a ton of room for them to work with 3 or even more chapters and stuff. I would love to see that type of card come back. And
then the flavor. Now that I am getting to it, the flavor was awesome. As someone who's a deeply invested D&D fan, I think they nailed the flavor. So I do have to give them credit for that. I think that was one of the wins, and I think AFR probably did pretty well because there's a lot of people who love D&D and love Magic, or people who don't know much about Magic, but the D&D flavor kind of got them in there. And even for you, Marshall, this flavor didn't come at like a cost to you, did it?
No, it was great. The only thing that I needed was you to explain it to me. And then once you did, I loved it. I loved that you come across a pair of goblins stuff. I love the beholders. Like this is my first experience with most of this stuff directly. And it was like, I remember doing the set review. I had a blast, but it was because I had you to explain it,
Yeah, but other people there are other friends who play D&D, or just Google, if they're really curious. And I think that the flavor was really sweet. I could tell that the people who made this, they had enough people working on the set who love D&D, who understood it and love it. It rings true to me, So you've seen products that are very clearly like, wow, the people who made this did not actually get the core of this product. They didn't understand, the secret sauce. They're not authentic. And this set was authentic. They did nail the D&D flavor, and that's a win. I think that's part of the goal of the set. The Magic sets are built to do a lot of different things. One of them is to provide a flavorful, immersive experience, and this set, I believe, kind of knocked that out of the park. So I wish the gameplay was a little better, because that's part of how we interact with the set. But honestly, I do love the flavor. I'm not unhappy of how the flavor turned out. Okay,
so that's a lot, right? That I really like how you broke that down. Did it teach you anything? Did the format teach you something, or, something about limited, or were there any takeaways for you?
I think that some of the takeaways were you can ignore the set mechanics and draft just straight up like, hey, the ABC Magic. You can, sometimes you just have to turn down the temptation to try to build around things. And yeah, that is disappointing, but it is definitely part of the equation, and you have to kind of interpret that when you are drafting those formats. Also, like, sometimes you can get a color that's just so bad that you really shouldn't be taking those cards. And we've seen this before. Green from Battle for Zendikar was, of course, like the most famous example. But we had another one where you kind of had to look at in the LR versus Low draft. It's funny how often this draft comes up, or I like to mention it. Who knows? But at the end of pack one, there was like packs where there was 6 cards left, and 4 of them were good blue commons. And yes. I still, even though I was taking them because there's nothing else to take, I still didn't really want to draft blue. Yeah. And the one blue drafter at the table did not have a particularly good deck, and you have to keep in mind sometimes the balance on the colors is really far off, and that can really change what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway for that is it serves as a reminder. Draft is self-correcting up to a point, right? It is possible to make a color so bad that you still don't incentivize. Like, you could just say, you can have all the blue cards you want, right? And unless you opened a rare or a mythic in blue that was one of those really good cards, and they really were. The dragon was incredible. The mind control guy was fantastic. Even the 2/1 that when it hits you dungeon was really strong. But like, if you don't have those, people would say, no, I'll just pass. I'm just not going to draft blue. I'm not even going to look at it. And that's when you know that it's gone too low, because if you can self-correct, then that's a cool thing. That's something for us to explore and for us to look into. But normally what ends up happening is that you do end up with this self-correcting nature, and there will be, like in this particular draft, there would be 1 blue drafter per table. And that person would be able to take over and, as the lone blue drafter, be able to benefit from the fact that most of the other drafters or none of the other drafters actually wanted it. And that didn't happen here. There was rarely, with experienced players, there was rarely a person who was even comfortable being the 1 blue drafter.
Yeah, it throws off the balance, and again reduces the variety of experiences you have, which I think just does make things less replayable.
Yeah. I don't love that the set mechanics were something that we could disregard here. I guess what I would say is my takeaway, or the thing that it taught me, was that I like it when the set mechanics matter. That's the default. That's what we normally have. But the fact that die rolling was ignorable and venturing felt like a trap, I didn't like that. I liked these things. I wanted to explore these. There was something cool here, and I felt foolish for doing so. And I think that that's a problem, right? I don't want to feel that way when these are 2 of the headliner mechanics for the set.
Yeah, it is both those things. It's both feeling foolish. No one likes to do that. You don't feel like, oh, I got trapped because I took the set mechanics. The other is, we play Magic because of the depth partially, and I'm not really interested in the experience of like, oh, is my 3/3 flyers going above your 4/4, and now I'm going to double block your 4/4 with my 2/2/2s. That's fine, but that should only be part of the range, not the entire range. And that's kind of felt like what the entire range was vanilla-ish creatures in removal. And it's like, yeah, that's not that exciting.
Right, and that's kind of what brings us to that really overly core set feeling. And I think a good way to, if you want to envision the type of thing we're talking about, is like look at the list of cards, like go on Scryfall and look at the cards. And if you just look down the list of them, there's a lot that will catch your eye as something that could be interesting, but ended up being completely uninteresting. And, we mentioned them before, but like good examples are like the die roll payoffs, or another one that missed is, these cards care about when you've completed a dungeon, right? The 2/3 guy or the 2/1 that comes back. That just didn't end up being a part of the format that was relevant. And it could have been, right? And I think the format would have been better if it were. I think that if the 1/3 that pinged people was something that deck wanted and actually did a little bit of work in it, then the format's better. Because there was just too much of it that got kind of scratched off as this just isn't a thing. And that's a result of the mechanics themselves failing. Rather than the individual cards that were relying on the payoffs. Any other takeaways before we give this thing a grade, Luis?
No, I think that I'm about where you are. As terms of a grade, I can't really give it higher than a C. I
gave it a C.
It's a set. I don't know. It's not an exciting one. Yep. It's got good flavor. It's got like cool concepts. The gameplay is fine. Like it's not for a set to get a D or less for me. The first 5 drafts would have to be unenjoyable, and they've never really done that. Like, Avacyn Restored might have been the first one where, like, a couple drafts in, we just had to get a bad feeling. Here, the first 10 drafts of the set were still pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's really where we are the power users, and we're the ones drafting it 30, 40, 50, 60 times. Not all sets are going to, like, work for that, and that's totally fine. I can't really dock them too many points when the first couple drafts are still pretty fun.
Yeah, I feel the same way. But, I mean, that being said, this is the lowest grade we've given a set since I don't know. What was the one that we didn't like? I can't remember what it's called now, but
Tornaville Train?
No. I don't think I hated drafting that.
No, I didn't either, actually.
What was the first one? The first one that came out on Arena with the fish guys, whatever it was called. But
Fish guys.
Yeah, what was it called? Like the Merfolk were in that set. Come on, Jeff. Producer Jeff, bail us out here. What was that stupid set called? Ixalan. Thank you, producer Jeff.
Oh wow, Jeff is just on it.
Thank you, producer Jeff. Ixalan Somebody has a brain here.
Ixalan was bad. I will have to. Give
and it feels like it's been a long time since I've really been like, But this one, I'm ready to. Okay, I'm done with that. Put it in the rear view. Let's move on to Innistrad and hope that's great. So C from both of us, and then the last thing to finish up here is, what was your favorite card of the format, Luis?
I actually really liked Forsworn Paladin. I thought Forsworn Paladin played really well.
Yeah.
This is the 1/1 that can make treasures, and then it can sack treasures, pay mana to give a creature +2/+0. Then if you sacked a treasure to pay for it, it gives it Death Touch. It did some cool stuff. I thought it was a fun card to keep in mind on board.
Yeah, I like that one for you because it's really powerful. Like that, it satisfies your spike side. It's a borderline bomb. I mean, that card is really fantastic. But the way
I'm
it
not
plays,
a spike anymore. I'm going to become a Vorthos because they made it clear there's no room for spikes in the Magic ecosystem.
Okay, you're going to move to Vorthos. Well, while we still have you in Spike Land here, but it also had you do different things, right? Like, pumping up something that's attacking versus making treasures are two completely different resources to take advantage of. My favorite card, just went with my gut on this one. It was Lurking Roper. I really like that card. It's huge. It had just enough ways to trigger it to untap it consistently, but not always. Sometimes it just had to sit there and lurk, and sometimes you got to rope with it. And I'm a big fan of cards that give you that tension. When you play it, it's like bigger than anything on the turn that you play it. But then, like, is it going to be really good this game where I have a life gain engine and I can attack, or is it just going to sit here and hold off the board forever? Either way, I was always happy with it. So give me as many Lurking Ropers as I can get my hands on. Also worked well with the fight spells in the format too. Okay, that's it for the AFR Sunset show. We'll send this one off into the horizon. A little bruised, but overall still intact. And a set that I drafted up until yesterday. So, can't say too much about it beyond that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. And I want to thank our sponsor once again, Channel Fireball. If you head over there, you can sell your cards back if you're looking to get into some Innistrad Midnight Hunt or whatever it is that you need. There's a couple of different ways to sell your cards back. The information's on the website over at Channel Fireball. If you do end up buying anything, please use the affiliate code LR. It helps out the show, and we do appreciate it. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week.
So I want to argue that tapas is the best way to enjoy a meal with your friends. So tapas style, this is it comes actually the origin is from Spanish bar food, where you had your drink, and to stop flies from getting into your drink, you would put something on top, and the tapas were like a piece of bread or something like that. And to keep the flies from getting into your beer, your wine, it evolved into basically like small plates of food, and basically the style of a bunch of different little small plates and eating what you want from those, and then like maybe ordering more if you decide you want a little bit more. All that I think leads to, I believe, one of the peak enjoyable experiences. It doesn't even have to be Spanish food is the thing. Is you can do tapas with really any style of food where basically you're having an all appetizer dinner. And you know what? You can include a main course if you really want, but I actually think it's awesome to just be like, all right, and this works better with more people. This is part of why I said with your friends or your family, it's really optimal. But imagine you sit down with 4 people, you each order like 2 or 3 little appetizers. You get all these little plates that are just a couple bites each. And then you just have this awesome variety of food. And then if you're hungry, you can order more, and it's kind of designed to just be like a little grazing thing. Obviously great with drinks too. And it makes, whenever I go to and have that experience, I think, wow, this just blows away the like, I'm going to order my one thing and eat my one plate of thing. Like, it's just not close. And then if you have even a greater size party, now we're talking family style. And family style, I think, is also an incredible experience. This is what you'll do often at like a Chinese restaurant, right? Where it's like, yeah, you're just going to get someone to order like, 5 or 6 dishes, and everyone just like takes what they want from those dishes. And you just have this variety. Because I think variety is such a good way to get like so much pleasure out of the food you're eating and have exactly the experience you want. Where, have you ever been to a restaurant where you order something and it just didn't come out that good, and you're just like, wow, I regret what I ordered. I shouldn't have gotten the BLT. I really wish I'd gotten something else. Yeah. Oh man, the pot sucks. Well, it doesn't really work that way in family style or tapas style.
You're diversifying your portfolio.
Exactly. And
Love it.
And I think that those kind of communal dining experiences also find really fun. I do think that, like something like Korean barbecue or hot pot is also this kind of experience that adds the additional element, or gyukaku is this like Japanese place here. It's got that like you grill your own stuff on the, like in the middle of the table. Mm-hmm. That can also be a lot of fun. Basically, I think that those kinds of eating experiences are the best way to celebrate company that you enjoy. And I think that that's something that, if you haven't tried that, I would recommend trying something like that. It's part of the reason I like Ethiopian food. You get this whole plate of injera with tons of different things on it, and you can kind of mix and match. And it's a lot of fun. It's really, really awesome. And we're going to go do that tonight, which is why I was thinking about it.
Now I'm thinking about it.